Hello, and welcome to Guidance for Better Life. My guest today is Jan Reed, and she has a beautiful story where the divine guided her to her dad's funeral on time safely through a very heavy snowstorm. Even when the local troopers thought it was too dangerous, she continued on with divine guidance and made it safely to her destination with total trust in her guidance. It's a really fascinating story, and I hope you'll stay tuned. Hi, Jan.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you.
So your dad passed away, I think it was February 2014.
Correct.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were at work, and you came home, I guess that day he passed away. When you got home from work, you got a message that your dad had passed.
Mm-hmm. My nephew called me and said that my dad had passed away, and it was a real shock because I thought he was going to rehab. And so
Okay. Did he seem healthy before that, or was
he had
there
a
a
stroke.
concern?
Yeah, he had a stroke, and but they just had a urinary infection that they needed to clear up, and then he was going to rehab. So when I found out that he had passed away, it was just...
Yeah, it's just, that didn't sound like he was going to die with those type things.
No.
You just never know. But of course you wanted to get to the funeral, and that was a Tuesday night, and the funeral was scheduled, and you had to get started. You decided to get started Wednesday morning to drive. You went from Virginia, where you live here in Virginia, to Indiana, right? Where your home is. The problem was, if I understood your story right, there was a heavy snowstorm just starting, and it was forecast to get actually pretty severe, right where you're going.
It was like a severe blizzard that was coming in up the East Coast, and it was going to be hitting Charlottesville later in the afternoon.
And that's where you lived, in the Charlottesville area.
And all the airports were closed down, so I couldn't fly. So I knew the only way I could get home was, to my hometown, would be driving.
Okay.
Looking at the weather map, it looked like West Virginia was just going to get maybe an inch or two later that evening. And then Ohio was clear, so my plan was that I was going to, take off and get through West Virginia into Ohio.
Okay. It didn't work out that way.
Didn't quite work out that way at all.
You can't plan the weather. So you started, I think, the following morning, which is a Wednesday morning, and the flurries were already coming.
They had just started when I left, so it was just still real light, but I knew it was, I got to get out of town now.
She's trying to beat the snow. So how'd it go for that first day?
Well, I had...
I know you made it to, I think, Beckley, West Virginia. But by Beckley, you were down to, 25 miles an hour? And I think the stuff they put on the road, you said in your story, it was so cold that the chemicals were not melting the ice or the snow. So you were on snow and ice about 25 miles an hour. Was there much traffic?
It was pretty heavy till I got close to Beckley, and then it had really slowed down. I think people were stopping there for the night. Most
rational people were off the road. But you had a mission, and you wanted to keep going. And I think you had a trooper even tell you the roads were open, so you could legally proceed. I think a toll road. And did you actually turn around to go back and look for a hotel at first, and then changed your mind?
I had gotten off at a rest stop that I usually on the trip will stop at. It's a great big rest stop. And at that point, the snow was piled so high, it was like these tunnels. And so I stopped to use the restroom. And then I spotted this trooper, and I asked him about the roads up to Charleston. And that's when he told me, you need to go back to the last exit. And,
but you didn't. You actually continued on. So the whole story here is that the divine kept guiding you. How did you know the divine said it was okay and you'd be safe to continue?
I just got very strongly that if I went back to the motel, back and exit, that I was going to be stuck in Beckley,
West Virginia,
and I would not make it to the funeral. I'd be stuck there.
You felt you were guided to that conclusion?
Definitely. Yes.
Were you guided also that the divine would help you get on through, or just that you wouldn't make it on time?
Up to that point, I had been driving on snow and ice in really critical situation up to Beckley, and I was so focused and in the moment. The guidance was very clear through that time, and so I just had this really deep peace with this guidance that I was safe, and so I just trusted that that would continue.
Yeah, you said in your story, and your story is actually, it's chapter 28 in Testimonies of God's Love, Book 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the chapter.
Correct.
You were saying that you actually felt like you're in this bubble of love and protection, totally at peace, no stress or strain, and that you'd be okay. And you felt like it was okay, that the nudge was to continue on or there'd be too much snow, that it was actually safer and you'd achieve your destination on time for the funeral if you kept going. But you explain that feeling. You were like this, like a magic oasis of tranquility or something?
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain that?
It was like I was so aware that I was in the hands of God, and it was like that safety net, and the presence of the Lord, the divine, was so palpable, and being so focused and in the moment, it was like the guidance was just crystal clear, and impeccable every moment.
Okay.
And that experience was just so exquisite. It was just like, I didn't want to be anywhere else. I would still be there in eternity in that moment. It was just like everything I needed. It was just...
Yeah, you lacked nothing. You felt totally safe, totally at peace in this, like, the hand of God, this bubble of love and guidance and protection.
Yeah, everything.
So you're in this blizzard. Most people are off the road. Even the trooper said it's probably better not to go. At that point, I think you said in the book, you were going fairly slow in the 20 miles an hour range, and there was no traffic at that point when you reached the mountains.
It was pitch black. It was
It's
midnight.
night.
It was midnight. The visibility was really low. I was going through these mountain passes. Sometimes I just used the rumble strip to know where I was. I've been through that area twice since then, and in the daytime. And it's just like, oh my God.
What had you done?
Oh my God. I was
in
just
hindsight,
like,
you wouldn't do it. But at that moment, it was really neat, and we're not covering everything in your story, how everything was as it should be. You were totally at peace. You were actually almost in bliss driving, and you felt the divine presence very strong in and around your car. Do you feel like God wanted to make sure you safely got to your dad's funeral?
very much so. I
Yeah.
felt so loved and protected and guided. And
You must have had, you keep crediting God for taking care of you, but you must have a certain amount, you have great trust, I guess, in the Lord, right? In the divine. But you also must have a little bit of courage. If you're driving at night over the mountains, nobody's on the road, and you use the rumble strip to stay on the road, that's pretty courageous on your part, too. I mean, God was protecting you, but even so, that took some courage. You must have had an incredible amount of trust in your guidance. Absolutely,
Definitely.
literally, your life depended on it. Because I know, I've known you for many years, and you're very rational. She's not a crazy person. You normally wouldn't do that, but you were in this beautiful hand of God protective bubble, and your courage and your trust in the Lord, and you made it, and you made it in time for the funeral and to be there with family. If you hadn't left when you got that strong nudge to leave at the beginning of the snow, do you think you would have had, even with the Lord's help, even with divine protection, you think it would have been tough to make it?
I don't know that it would have been possible at all.
Not even possible.
Because by the time I got to Charleston, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and it snowed all night long. And in the morning, I was told that it was going to continue to snow all day. And I got, again, a very, very strong nudge, leave now.
Now, you did finally in Charleston, West Virginia. Is that it?
That's where I stayed
West
overnight.
Virginia, you finally had that's prudent to sleep. But you got up, instead of delaying and doing other things, you got a strong nudge from the divine again. Get going. Did the storm would it have gotten worse if you hadn't gotten going right then?
I would have been stuck in Charleston.
Okay.
Yeah. I got outside of Charleston on the north side, and all of a sudden everything came to a standstill. It was one lane, and we probably sat there 45 minutes or so. And finally things started moving. And again, by the time I got to Ohio, it was clear.
Wow.
So.
Beautiful story. And you've taken many years. I've known you for a long time. I think it takes time to build that much trust in God. You may love God, you want to trust, but to actually trust in a situation like you were in, where it would be very frightening to most people, you trusted when you needed it. So, beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
One of the things I learned through all of that experience was that listening is a two-way street. You know, you can listen to the divine. You learn over time to really listen to that still, quiet voice of God.
Okay.
But it's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to timely follow through, to really act upon it. And in this case, it's like I had to just do it and not do my usual thing of, well, let me take a shower first, let me eat my breakfast first, then I'll leave.
So when you were in was it Charleston, when you got that nudge, you got to get going, or you're not gonna. It's gonna be too much snow. You didn't delay and take a shower, watch the morning news. You got up and went, and you think that made a difference.
Definitely.
That's a really good point. I've known a lot of people over the years who learn to listen and trust that inner voice, which is the divine speaking to us and trying to guide us and protect us and all that. But they dally, they hear it, but they don't respond. And responding is responding in a timely way. You could have responded to get going, but later in the day, and you might not have made it. Even the divine's not going to drive a snowplow for you or something. So
usually it probably has happened.
It could happen. So a good thing. Did that help you later in life, and after your father's funeral and all? Are you more timely in responding to divine guidance now, or is that something you still kind of slow down and get around to it later?
I'm doing much better about it. You know, I have my moments and then I see later it would have been more impeccable timing to have done right when I was told.
So it's something you're not perfect at, but you're getting better at.
Correct.
Okay, well, thank you. Why would God help you get you to your dad's funeral? Why would he do that for you?
He loves us so much, and it's like he wants to bless us, and I'm just really grateful, and he wants to bless everyone that way.
Yes, very cool. Well, thank you very much, Jen, for coming in today and doing this interview. I hope people get something out of it. And God wants to bless you too. Every one of us out there, God truly loves his children, and he tries to guide us and tries to help us go in the direction that's good for us and accomplishing the things that we'd like to accomplish in life. But like Jan said, it's a two-way street. And a lot of folks I know kind of learn to listen to the divine, and they get a nudge or a feeling, but then they blow it off. Either they don't trust it, or they delay and procrastinate. They decide, well, they'll do it tomorrow, the next day. And often the guidance from the divine, the timing is quite often very important. So thank you for watching, and thank you, Jan, for coming in today. And I hope this show blessed you in some way. Thank you very much.